Hi everyone. Today's episode is different in the sense that I'm recording an interview with my friend Alice McDonald, who has just opened up a specialist indoor plant shop called Potso. It's located in the eastern suburbs of Adelaide on Fullerton Road, and it's a very special shop in the sense that Alice stocks rare and hard to find indoor plants. But Alice herself has a really fascinating story as to how she came to open this shop, and I might introduce Alice now to just give us a background as to how we got here. Alice McDonald, welcome.
Hi Jo, thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a while in terms of me chasing you to record the podcast, and you've been very busy, to your defence.
I have.
Setting up this beautiful shop. And to give everyone a word picture, Alice, can you describe to us what we're seated amongst right now on this beautiful evening in early autumn?
It's a shop that is painted entirely black. We have exposed rafters, skylights, and a ceiling full of tassel ferns, ripsalis, all sorts of wonderful green beings, chains of hearts, metres of chains of hearts hanging from the ceiling, and all sorts of other wonderful green things.
Alice, your beautiful shop is only a few months old, but this...
Not even. 6 weeks.
But adjacent in terms of the vicinity, the next door shop to this lovely indoor plant shop is your flower shop, which you've had for 17 years?
Yes, in June, 17 years in June.
So how does a florist turn into an indoor plant aficionado, so much so that you want to open up a companion shop dedicated to indoor plants?
I think I've always been fascinated by flowers and plants, and years of nattering with succulents and cactus, and then that turned into orchid plants at home, and then they came into the store at the flower shop, and that grew and grew and grew until my flower shop slowly turned into a plant shop, and then I realised I needed a plant shop.
Wow, your flower shop the walls were lined with sort of apothecary drawers and beautiful terrariums, and it was you're known in Adelaide as being a specialist florist that does arrangements and beautiful displays that are different to the norm. Would that be fair? In a beautiful way.
I think so, yeah. I really like more unusual, unique flowers, and that then just turned into unique and interesting plants.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
So it naturally developed, and it's a huge, credit to you, Alice, and I understand you also co-own this shop with your sister.
Yes.
So it's a family affair.
Which makes it more special.
It does, absolutely. And you've sort of incorporated a bit of industrial design in terms of your shop fixtures as well. You've got amazing salvaged and repurposed steel shelving.
Yes, I love a little junkyard find.
Who doesn't?
The cheaper the better.
Cheaper the better. You've got a couple of old wooden workbenches that were once probably in someone's shed somewhere,
yes,
which you're using for displays as well. And I have my eye, and as you know, I'm lusting after what's directly behind me as I sit on the floor here recording this podcast with you, a shoe shelf.
Yes, a shoe trolley, an industrial shoe trolley.
Which is from the 40s, do you think? 30s, 40s, 50s, Alice?
Yes, it actually came out of a factory in Adelaide, and my mum took the other one.
Yeah, she got the better one.
She did the better one.
The better one, yeah. It's a piece of industrial design magnificence, and I covet that shelf. But it's just a real eclectic atmosphere in here, Alice. And you also propagate a lot of your own plants. So can you tell us a little bit about what you propagate and the mixture of plants? It is a mixture of sourced plants, but largely propagated on your own.
We're trying to, purely because the industry demand outstrips supply every day of the week, and taking a bit of pressure off and not just being another plant shop that opens up and then is putting further stress on that. So a lot of these plants and things that we can propagate that are within our capabilities, we have 3 glasshouses and have been propagating and on-growing plants for a good 18 months pre-opening.
Wow.
So we do have a good amount of product ready to come in and further on the way.
You've been well supported by the people of Adelaide, and I think indeed also people have heard about your shop online and have done, online orders through giving you a call, sending you messages through social media. What, as you've described when you were introducing or giving us a word picture of your shop, What trends are you noticing in rare and hard to find? You know, tassel ferns, Dischidias. What are your biggest sellers in terms of customer demand, Alice?
Well, the last couple of weeks has been tassel ferns because we had a huge shipment arrive, and they're so beautiful and so elegant and ancient. Just such an old plant, and they're just so varied. So that's probably my favourite at present. Bit of a sucker for a Monstera Stanleyana, and recently Philodendron Soderoy has joined our list of things that are being on-grown, and we currently have some in the store for sale.
Nice.
I love alocasias.
Yes, you do have a soft spot for alocasias.
I do fancy an alocasia or 5. And Hoyas. Oh, just can't get past a good Hoya.
Alice, you know, these haven't been seen in the large national commercial chains that do sell plants. Do you think the scarcity has just caused people to go hunting for the more rare and unusual, the grandma type plants that were around in the 60s and 70s?
Absolutely. But I think also running alongside those sort of rarer, if you'd like to call them that, and harder to find, I would prefer to say, we also look to stock beautiful plants. So even just as simple as, even the Persian shields, they're quite beautiful and they're not overly complicated or extremely rare in that sense. So anything that I deem or my sister deems to be beautiful, we also stock that. So
it's a real curation of your taste, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Purely subjective. And I figured, well, if we're here every day, all day, we should be selling things we're passionate about and really love, and not the typical plants that you see at hardware stores and run-of-the-mill garden centres.
Alice, do you find that your customers that physically come into the shop, are they a mixture of people who know their plants and who are looking for particular rarities or ones that are hard to find, and equal amounts of perhaps people who know not too much about indoor plants and are willing to try and experiment something new?
Yes, absolutely. So we have people who just walk in and go, I'm just going to pop in. And then they come out with 6 or 7 plants and they're ready to go. They know what the cost is. They've read the price boards. They know what the plants' correct names are, because that's how we name everything in the store. Yep. And then the flip side of that is we might get someone who is completely naive to plants and come in and they love the way the giant mature tassel ferns look that we have, and they pick one up as a gift. They're just popping out to someone's house for morning tea, and then when we tell them the cost of the mature tassel fern, they're a little bit shocked. So it's a matter of educating and just talking to people and letting them know what those plants are really, and why they're worth that much, and why they cost that much for having an import license and having them inspected and having them air freighted down and cared for, indeed, by you and your sister in the glass houses.
Yes. That's a hidden cost that people perhaps some people may not be aware of.
Drawing a wage is that hidden cost.
That's right.
Living.
And we are both residents of Adelaide, and so we get very cool winters here that fall beneath, well below 0 degrees, and the heating costs are a real challenge for glass house owners, of which I have a few as well, and it's these costs that perhaps people at first blush aren't aware of, because such as the demand, Alice, as you know, that we resort to growing our own plants because we simply can't source them.
No, or you wait 6 months to be allocated 3 or 5 from a wholesaler.
Yes.
And they're gone in a hot 5 seconds.
Alice, I'm really interested to know, what do you think has driven this huge surge? It's just growing month by month, year by year in Australia and perhaps worldwide for indoor plants. What do you think sparked it? They certainly fell out of fashion and favour in the 80s and 90s. Didn't see a sort of plant to save yourself in India.
No. Oh, look, people are so stressed and time poor, and plants are so relaxing, and just the exact opposite to all the things that modern day life offers.
Do you think it's also...
Plants offer that moment to just slow down. I mean, even as you and I sit in the shop now, I think we're both sort of really quite chilled.
We've had a lovely dinner before recording this, sitting amongst the plants and absorbing all the...
Well, we could be slipping into a food coma.
We could be slipping into a food coma after a fantastic Thai meal, but Do you think there's anything also to be said about people perhaps not having the time for an outdoor garden, smaller home sizes?
Absolutely. Just down the road from the shop, you've got Living Choice and Carmelite up the road, Glen Osmond Road, and they're multi-storey dwellings and quite luxurious for retirement. And you've got people downsizing, and they don't want to get rid of all those wonderful things that also mean having a lovely lifestyle, like a beautiful balcony of plants. And because it's restricted in size, they want the nicest, the best plants.
Yeah, absolutely. I do recall when I was working long hours in my former profession, I used to enjoy the fact that with my indoor plants, it'd be dark in the middle of winter and I could come home and be surrounded by them. And that was a huge joy for me to come home to. And that's the downside of an outdoor garden is when it's dark, you can't see it. And I used to love just watering them and fussing over them when I'd come home at night when it was late. You get to sort of have them with you all the time. But it's certainly... do you think it's a trend that will continue, Alice, and just only grow?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the number of high-density buildings going up in residential spaces. And just, I think it's only going to get bigger.
It's interesting in terms of, I think I've noticed myself, it spans the age brackets and age ranges of the population. It's not a niche that's centred around one category of person, is it?
No, not at all. I think we get people from all walks of life and all age groups, and sometimes the people who come in and buy a jewel orchid, for instance, they're so small and they're so delicate and beautiful, and they have such a small amount of space on their windowsill in their retirement village or at the War Veterans Home up the road. But that really special plant is going to be admired and adored, and it's just the right thing for their 90-year-old grandmother.
Yeah, there's certainly an absolute joy to be had with indoor plants. It's and for some, they delve down that rabbit hole, for a huge distance.
Once you buy one, you're never going back.
You're never going back, and once you're bitten by the bug. Alice, your problem would be very similar to the one I face in terms of...
a problem? I don't have a problem. I don't have a plant problem. What are you trying to say, Jo?
Oh, gosh, I know.
I opened a whole store to facilitate my plant problem.
You sure did, I know, and you get to enjoy it daily. But my challenge, Alice, and it's a challenge I know that you share as well, is continuing to find supply. And I know that we both propagate our own plants to some extent, but even that doesn't quench the thirst for people's demand.
No, you still have lulls where you think, oh, we're not going to have that for 5 months or so.
And being in Adelaide, South Australia, and it makes sense, the vast majority of the population's on the eastern seaboard. The wholesalers over there do obviously receive the first shipments of any, indoor plants that are slightly different to the norm. And I think it just fades away as the plant supply moves across South Australia and depletes even further to
dwindle
WA.
Off, doesn't it? Yes.
Let alone the quarantine issues, but it's just consumed, everything is consumed by the eastern seaboard. You have to be clever, don't you, when you're sort of in our predicament. Very clever.
And we do have some beautiful, very old growers, as in the industry for, 20, 30, 40 years here in South Australia, and making those connections. And for me, actually, interestingly enough, a lot of those actually came through flowers. So I had been dealing with these people already for 20 years with flowers, and I never really dawned on me to buy plants. And then gradually, I'd go and I'd pick up my flowers, and I'd pick up a plant for myself, and then I just sort of started buying more and more, and as it happens, and as everybody knows, more and more.
Yes. And then now you end up with your own shop.
Et voila.
Yeah, it's a generational issue as well, in terms of a lot of these older growers who have these exceptional collections, and they are mainly interstate, Alice.
And they all grow the old school way.
Yes, which means slow and steady propagation.
Yes, but good, healthy, quality plants.
But a lot of these people are, ageing in terms of their ability to continue doing what they're doing, and I do worry a little for what's ahead.
Yeah.
For us and others like us, in terms of trying to continue to source unusual plants and provide them for sale. it's a challenge generally, and the loss of perhaps amazing collections that you and I haven't even come across or discovered yet.
No.
Or anyone having discovered.
And a lot of these very older nurseries are situated like bang in the middle of suburbia on land parcels that are worth much more if they're sold and not having plants grown on them.
It's a real challenge, and
it will be an end of an era to see eventually. Nothing great lasts forever in that sense, but as with the closing of one door, another door opens. So
yes, and I know there are a number of other players in the indoor plant market in Australia, and I think everyone who is certainly on the smaller end of the scale is scouring the country trying to source and treasure and save in terms of being an arc for all these wonderful, weird and unusual plants. But I know eBay can be a good source of plants for us, and that we can grow them on eBay. But yeah, it certainly is a challenge. But in the meantime, we are doing, both of us are doing our best to try and find unusual and fascinating
I must say,
plants.
eBay is a foreign thing to me. I don't really
partake in eBay.
No. I think I've purchased 2 things in my entire life. I don't have an eBay account.
Wow.
I know, I'm living in the dark ages, aren't I?
No, that's okay. We've all got our specialty.
I prefer a good old-fashioned retail store.
Yes.
With, beautiful collected wares and upcycled items. And
opposites attract, Alice, don't they?
Yes,
and I think
we do have Instagram and Facebook.
You do?
And we do ship all over the country and to quarantine states, thanks to your fantastic quarantine services.
Oh, Alice. Gosh, this loving can continue all night, but we'll probably make people sick. Alice, where do you think indoor plants are heading in terms of the trend? Do you see the trend heading more towards the ferns? Do you see it? Do you see people...
Ferns?
No.
Ferns inside typically are problematic. They need really good airflow.
Absolutely.
Tassel ferns, I find, are slightly different.
Forgiving?
They are more forgiving. Even though they are a fern, they are more forgiving. But things like maidenhair ferns, they seem to be very finicky items, don't they? And we do not have them in here. I think that's because, being a child of the 80s, they were featured heavily in the fernery.
Yes. No, they were stalwart of the fernery.
Yes.
My gut prediction is, for my first question, is variegation was a huge trend.
White
knight, white princess. Anything variegated has been, just in my pure observations, has been in high demand.
Yes.
Do you think that trend will continue, or do you think it's...
absolutely. In fact, it's only getting worse, I think. Yes, or let's call it stronger. Getting stronger.
I think the trend towards the rare and unusual will continue. I think people want to be individuals and proudly display, and who wouldn't, their latest amazing find, in the back streets of a garage sale. Although I have said to you, I do dream of sort of wandering through a property to, pick up something, or at a garage sale you see spectacular rare plants. That would be a dream come true. But you would agree with that? The rare and unusual, people are really thirsty for
absolutely
having their own mark on the...
But as I have had a few customers this week say to me, oh yes, I've had this wonderful philodendron, but I just didn't realise how large it was going to get.
Right.
Yes. Rule number 1, plants grow.
Plants sure do grow. And I know that that's a problem. You may...
Make sure you're buying to that is appropriate to your space, especially and future space.
If it's in a terrarium as well. I know that we've seen a number of terrariums that have been potted up with ferns that will probably grow to the size of a small car.
Yes, and the terrarium is about as big as an orange.
That's right.
Interesting concept.
Interesting concept. But, that's what you're here for, and people can certainly ask you for advice, Alice, when they come to your amazing shop, if either they live in South Adelaide, South Australia, or visiting here. So variegation, I think, is still a hot trend. And, of course, we have the pink princess. It's not just white variegation, is it, Alice? It's the pink princesses of the world.
Absolutely.
Me personally here, I'm not a huge fan of the pink princess. I find it pretty unstable and can be... I'm trying to look for the appropriate word here. Not overly attractive once it matures. Well, yes. The growth habit I find not particularly attractive, and I can find the stem quite brittle. But anyway... I
do prefer a white knight.
You do prefer a white knight. That's an ultimate unicorn plant right there, isn't it?
Yes, and believe it or not, we actually have 3 in stock, just sitting on the shelves, waiting to go. I mean,
we're in the presence of one here, 3 here, but yeah, that would still be right up there, Alice. I mean, it's not quite, is it? Is it quite? It's not variegated monstera level, is it? The white knight, but it certainly gives it a run for its money.
Yes, definitely a desirable plant.
A very slow grower.
Yes, they can be down for 12 months and have only a handful of roots, or they can be down for 2 months and have really good root growth. They're sort of at their own pace.
I have found as well, and I do, and as you know, I have recorded the inaugural episode with Neil Crafter. I'm a huge fan of Neil Crafter's propagation method, which is the moist sphagnum moss.
Oh, Neil! Shout out to Neil. Life changing.
And in the Ziploc bag, I think I've bought
moss pots in Ziploc bags.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. That's all you need to say.
But I do find with the white knight, Alice, it kind of can look like it's sprouted 1,000 roots, and then you sort of brush off the sphagnum moss because the top looks quite healthy.
There's
Nothing there.
Oh, and your cutting's rotted. Actually, I did attempt to do a pink princess. I chopped up the whole plant, lost every single cutting in the moss.
In the pink princess?
Yes, the whole plant. I thought, that was really worth it, wasn't it?
There's another reason, and I think something similar happened to me as well, Alice. You dare touch it. I actually don't think it's a fan of being chopped up. It's not very forgiving, is it?
Well, I'm a bit kamikaze with things like that. I seem to actually be better off just risking straight into soil.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, I have been known just to say, well, this is your one chance. You either grow or you go. And more often than not, we have about a 90% strike rate straight into soil.
Jeez, you put the pressure on them. You have a hard word before you know.
But that's in a glass house. It's heated, humidity. What more could you want when you're a plant?
Alice, I think the plant that has certainly had its day, has certainly had its run, is the famous or infamous Pilea.
Yes.
Peperomioides. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Peperomioides.
Thank you.
Kind of just say that last bit really fast.
Thank you. That certainly has done its dash. I do remember, Alice, because I have been, a citizen of the online world.
Yes.
With eBay, initially an eBay seller. I could remember, it would be 18 months to 2 years ago, seeing the smallest little Pilea sell for $180.
Yes.
And then came the flood onto the marketplace. So,
well, I have one that's nearly 4 years old now, and when I bought that, it was $80, and the entire plant. When it arrived to me, I actually couldn't stop laughing. It was so small, I couldn't believe it. I just thought the whole thing was hilarious. And then it never occurred to me that I might kill it.
And you?
No, I did not kill it. It's resplendent. It's in the front window.
That's your super advanced.
Yeah, it's a couple of feet tall. Yeah.
I have to admit, I still adore when they mature and they get that lovely thick woody stem, and you get those beautiful discs that shoot off at a horizontal angle from the stem. They are stunning, and I do have a soft spot for once they're quite mature and get to that point. They are lovely, but I have had my glass houses full of immature ones, and I am glad to have moved some of them on in terms of making space in the glass houses, but that certainly is a plant that's had its day.
Yes, I think that's definitely come down to why don't we call it an everyday plant?
Yeah, an oversupply has.
I recommend, and I think it's a great plant. So if someone comes in and they're looking for a plant for a housewarming gift, that's perfect. You can do a pot and a plant for about $40 and it's fantastic. And it's got good vibes. It's the money plant. It's the friendship plant.
And it has those beautiful pups. So if you've got kids and you want to teach them, you get the little babies,
and they're super
up.
easy to propagate. So guaranteed success.
Guaranteed success. I just wanted to talk to you briefly about Anthurium, in particular Anthurium crystallinums.
Oh, yes.
In your, just jumping back to your flower.
They're so gorgeous.
They are so gorgeous. I know you've been using for years Anthurium flowers in your flower arrangements, but you've now, as you've admitted, developed this passion for indoor plants, and that would have obviously led you to acquire some Anthuriums. But yes, they are some stunning specimens, aren't they, Anthurium crystallinums?
Well, for years, you used to be able to buy a box, and when I think about it now, I think, oh God, how could they bear to cut the leaves off? You could buy a whole box of what they referred to as turtle leaves, because they looked like the box of the back of a turtle. The leaves look like the back of a turtle. So turtle leaves. And they would be clarinervium and crystallinum leaves.
I didn't know this story, Alice.
And I just used them willy-nilly in things, and they were just fabulous.
So turtle leaves in your floral arrangements. And
yes.
At that point in time, you never
I look
sort
at the
of
ones
thought,
on mine and I think, God, I would never cut them. I'd have to sell them for $50 each.
Yes, and they obviously were growing like weeds from wherever supply was
Yes, I would
providing
say
them to.
Southeast Asia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can find them a challenging plant to grow. Certainly not one for the beginner, Alice.
No, I would say, in my experience, glasshouse would be a must.
Would you even go as far as, I know we've had this discussion, which is probably our next topic, glasshouse with a
So
heat mat
many
underneath
discussions.
it? Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I have them not currently on the heat mat, but really high humidity and good light. And I believe I got that plant from you, and I don't know what I was thinking. I bought that at the start of winter
And it's just
after killing the
thrived in
previous
there.
one. Yes, and I thought, let's go for another one for whatever reason. And it's been wildly successful.
And I think at the same time, listeners, I had about 10 losses at the same. Shortly after Alice acquired hers, all 10 of mine died. I have had a few resprout. That's a little tip for listeners as well. I couldn't bring myself to throw the carcasses of the deceased plants away.
Never. Always give them a second chance.
And I basically punished them all by putting them all in the one pot to say, you've burnt me, I'm upset, I can't bring it through it, here's your last chance, I'm going to jam you all in one pot. And I shoved them on the shelf in the glass house. And to my surprise, about half of them resprouted.
Yes, well, the one that I thought I killed also resprouted. So,
and I'm sure I'm going to use the word stem and root ball looked pretty darn bad. Like I think most people would have cast that in the rubbish bin straight away. And a lesson to the listeners: keep on trucking, so to speak. Give it a second go.
Yes. Also applicable to Philodendron gloriosum too. Yeah, I think you could drive over them with your car and then repot them, and they'd still grow.
Yes, they for a velvet,
without a glass house.
For a velvet philodendron, and this is important for perhaps residents who are in Victoria and South Australia and WA and Tas. We don't have the luxury of the subtropical climates, but they are a very forgiving velvet philodendron, unlike the Gigas, which I've killed 3 times, and the verrucosum.
Yes.
I'm going to say verrucosum, Alice.
Oh dear, yes.
Twice.
Well, if we just look up to the shelf on our right there, we can see a small pot of sticks. That is currently our verrucosum. I haven't made friends with him yet, but he has reshot, and so 3 plants from one is not a bad turnout, but it would be nice if it had leaves. I'd probably feel more confident at this point.
Yeah, velvet philodendrons. I have a lot of success with Milana chrysum and
Beautiful
gloriosum.
beautiful plant.
But Gigas and verrucosum elude me, and I don't think I'll be back there for a little while. Well, you can't find them, Alice. That's the other issue.
Yes.
I think verrucosum are sort of, I'm going to say more difficult to source than, a Borsiana variegated monstera.
Yes.
Rare as hen's teeth. If anyone is out there, contact me, because I will have another go if you can find one. But
we'll have another go. I love it.
Who can say no to
Oh,
those,
you can't
Alice?
help yourself, can you?
You can't help
No.
yourself. I'm just glancing around the shop again as I speak to you, Alice, and I'm seeing some super, super advanced fiddle leaf figs. God, they're stunning to fill a corner.
There's something about a big tree in a room, isn't there?
Yes. I really, you've got, about 6
And
or
I know
8 in
they've
here.
also dramatically come down in price,
Absolutely.
but not necessarily popularity, purely because they are such a hardy indoor tree, although I'm sure there are people listening who would disagree with that.
Yes, they can actually curl up their toes and die. But
The key is consistent, proper watering.
Yeah, Alice, talk to us a bit about what you do, because there is a trick, and it's almost underwatering in terms of just, I'd say, would you do it once a week? No?
No, I do it when it's dry. So your fiddle leaves, they really need to be properly and fully soaked all the way through, as with any indoor plant. And that then when it's time to re-water, depends entirely on your situation. How dry your room is, how quickly your plant dries out. And the best way is to really just pick the pot up and
Finger testing?
I'm not a big fan of the finger test. In fact, I did tell my sister off for doing that.
Did you?
And she looked at me like, I'm just checking the soil. And I said, but what if there's a tiny new little plant growing and you've just literally poked it off? Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I like to give the pot a little squeeze. So a quick little squeeze just to loosen the soil. And then I will most of the time do top watering, and I will hold the pot and run the water through it, or put my watering can water through it until I can feel it get quite heavy and I know that it's completely soaked, and then back on the shelf after a few minutes on the drain board.
What the key there is that it's a deep soak. That's perhaps not every second day. Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it, Alice?
Yes, and so that it's you're not doing it. This is to try and help customers understand, because they're like, but should I just do it like every Monday or every Friday? And it's like, imagine your plant is Usain Bolt, right?
Yeah.
If you want him to run the fastest and be the best, he needs a really big meal.
Yes.
Not like a tiny little breadcrumb. Constantly. You want to give him really big protein meals. So and they're like, right, okay. Not this dribble with my water bottle on the way out the door.
Right.
Yeah, so a good proper watering. And if you're worried about that, or you want to give your plant a soak, the other way of doing it is filling up a container with water, putting your pot in it and letting it soak overnight. That's a bit problematic if you have a whole shop full of plants, or such as myself, more than 70 indoor plants in your house.
Yeah. No, fair enough too, Alice. But you do have to exercise some caution though, because fiddle leaf figs can burn on the ends, can't they, in terms of getting that brown crispiness on the edge of the leaves?
Yes.
Is that a sign of overwatering?
I found that a sign of underwatering.
Have you?
Yes. But do you know what? It's nature. They're plants. They're
individuals as well. Is what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So a really good soak. And I'm a big fan of sea salt, so we do that fairly regularly.
Right. Okay.
And then obviously in these warmer months, which is the growing period, to then also use Thrive as well. But just making sure that there's 1 or 2 waterings in between a fertilise. That's just regular water, so you're not accumulating salts, and you're sort of giving it a bit of a flush out as well.
Nice. So, but they're your go-tos. A bit of a sea salt and a Thrive.
Yes,
yeah.
And I'm sure there are people out there who have their own methods, or, disagree with perhaps the regularity of sea salting.
But that's what's worked for you.
Yes, that's what works for me. That's what, the plants in the shop are very happy and healthy. And
that's a very good point, Alice, because it's going to lead me to the issue of fungal gnats.
Hello, overwaterers.
I know how much you enjoy a good Facebook post about fungal gnats, of which there seem to be many. Alice, I can hand on my heart say, as I glance over, because it is getting dark now and the lights are shining brightly in this lovely shop, and there's not a flying insect to be seen, Alice.
No, there isn't. And
there's a heck of a lot of plants in here. What's your secret? How come you are gnat free? Some people swear it's the potting mix.
Well, it certainly could be. I mean, for instance, when I make terrariums, a terrarium can sit for 2 years and have no sign of anything, and then, these toadstools just pop up.
Oh, yes.
So it's in the soil.
Yes.
You could buy a bag of potting soil and it has gnat eggs in it, but you can very easily, I have found, break the cycle by having a proper watering regime. So when you water, you're allowing it to dry out, which means that the eggs cannot hatch.
Right.
And then you don't have mature flies that are perpetuating that cycle.
No. And that's the secret, basically.
Yeah, well, for me it has been.
Yeah, as I said before...
We do sell carnivorous plants too, though, so if you do have a gnat problem and you are an overwaterer, carnivorous plants, they don't mind being overwatered. They could work for you. You
do, Alice, have at the front of your shop, which is where the most sun can creep in, because you've got lovely skylights that you've installed as well. But
my skylights.
Your skylights are beautiful.
They were a special treat.
Absolutely. But you have a really amazing succulent display that's in the front window that gets a heap of western sun.
Yes.
Alice, you straddle the divide, don't you, in terms of the plants? You love your foliage plants, your indoor plants, but you also admire succulents, which, just for me, it's not my caper, but you dip your toe in both ponds.
In all ponds, actually. I think that's, for me, is probably where it all started, was cactus and succulents. And then, yes, but the weirder the better.
The weirder the better. And then, of course, the carnivorous plants as well, Alice. You've got some sundews from memory, because I can't quite stand up with the headphones on. But
And then from cactus and succulents, I went into orchids. Yes, orchids. Oh, orchids.
Orchids. I did notice on your display, Alice, you've got tree fern bark, the sort of stump
with
of
the
a tree
miniature
fern.
orchids.
They're divine.
Yes. So I've got a little cucumber orchid up there, which is doing very well.
He does look very happy, Alice. Are they... I must admit, I am very drawn to them. Are you growing them?
We could get you into those, Jo.
I can
we could make that happen for you.
Succulents, no offence, not so much, but those, that certainly floats my boat. And I can't quite pick why. I love the combination of the backboard with the succulent, the orchid adhering to it. Are you growing those for the foliage? Is probably the incorrect word. And orchid lovers
because they're about 2 centimetres long.
I know, but
they're
that's
fantastic.
appeal. You almost need a little magnifying glass to really look at them. But are you growing them for the foliage, and for want of a better word, or is it the flower that they produce, Alice?
Well, the flowers are almost microscopic, I would say, and I'm yet to see one. But I do live in hope, because it's quite bright where they're situated, and they do need very regular misting and watering. So hopefully one day.
And I'm sure that'll slowly expand as the years go by, your collection of those miniatures.
Yes, and that's the other thing about the shop. I want to have those little, they're not for sale, they're part of our private collection, but to have those little curiosities, which even if we did have them, I don't believe would be big sellers, because they're quite obscure. But it's nice that people can see them and admire them, and know that there's not just maiden hair ferns out there in the world.
That's true. I did actually stumble across in wintertime last year at the military parade grounds in the city of Adelaide, which is adjacent to where Writers' Week is held. There was an annual orchid show.
Oh yes, they're very bad news to go to.
A number of orchid growers, or I think all the clubs around South Australia came together to do a display. And I think at the time I was did a U-turn when I saw the sign and ran in, and it was fabulous. The kids were sort of whinging behind me as I dragged them in. And at the time I was on the hunt for a jewel orchid, which I've subsequently now found. But
I know, I've seen them. They're quite spectacular.
the
trays of jewel orchids.
But
the way that Jo hoards her jewel orchids is a bit like a lady hoarding her jewellery, quite literally. The jewels. It's like, I can't part with my jewels.
I can't even subdivide those trays, Alice. They are like a tray of jewels, and I just break them apart.
Oh, it's just spectacular.
I should actually post an image of the 3 of the trays together. That I've got them planted in shallow, almost like the drip trays you'd get at the bottom of pots, and yeah, they're so thick and lush.
Yes, I could have popped one of those in my handbag on the way out.
But getting back to that orchid show, I'm going to put that, actually I must look that up on the diary, because I can recommend to people who may be listening, who are listening, just check out your local gardening clubs, in particular your local orchid clubs, because there are some doozies in terms of what they have for sale at these shows, Alice. I was
absolutely
in seventh heaven. You do need to bring a lot of cash. They're not card friendly. There's no FPOS machines to save yourself.
Yes.
So stock up on the cash before you go there. But my goodness, you get a cup of tea for $1 and a biscuit, and you can
shop to your heart's content.
I recommend going child free as well, because the whinging really adds another element. But yeah, if you do, just keep your eyes peeled. I think you can. Bromeliad people, the Bromeliad Society do a great show.
Yes. Actually, I have a customer, a lovely lady by the name of Jess. Hello, Jess, if you're listening. She is a mad plant person, all plants in fact, but she is a big sucker for a bromeliad and has quite a collection. So I feel like she might start influencing me as she comes in and buys things here and then talks to me about her bromeliads.
Well, I do know, having spoken to Jess at the Arrow Society Christmas lunch, that she is also a fan of the local garden, well, when I say local, the specialty garden clubs, and she herself has joined the Begonia Society, South Australian Bromeliad Society. I think it's cheap as chips membership too, Alice. I think it's $20 a year or $25.
Yeah, and just decades of knowledge, and just being able to, even if you're not able to purchase them, but to view plants and just to see what really is available.
Yes,
is quite amazing.
Alice, you've got as well not just plants, but you do have some fascinating pots and accessories that you can get with plants. I know that you are a stickler, and as you should be, in terms of what type of pots
No holes.
you sell.
No holes. We don't sell pots with holes.
And you know,
I hate the hole.
You've got the the proper orchid containers, because they're
orchid
epiphytic. Is that
yes,
the correct way to
yes,
pronounce it?
orchid baskets. So teak orchid baskets.
Which what basically means they're kind of slats with air gaps.
Yes,
to let
and
the sunlight in.
being teak are fantastic and extremely weather hardy, as in you can get them wet constantly, consistently over and over again, and they don't deteriorate.
Fabulous, and that's so important, because to really thrive, the orchids that you put in there, they need to have their roots exposed to sunlight and air.
Yes, brilliant for airflow. In fact, we actually have a number of them hanging from the ceiling at the moment with our mature tassel ferns, looking like green plant chandeliers.
They certainly do, Alice.
And they love it. It's just a little bit warmer in that midsection, about 2.5 metres in the air in the shop. So it's a nice little spot for them, very well lit and warm.
I think as well that you were in the process of sourcing, or you do indeed have, because you saw a niche in the market where there's some stunningly beautiful pots that are available in gift shops around Australia, in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, but some of them are fairly impractical. Maybe perhaps a bit too shallow, Alice.
Not deep enough, not big enough.
Don't carry the standard pot sizes, even like your standard 12 centimetre insert.
Yes, and so we have a standard pot that we use. It's pretty much everything is grown, propagated, and it's probably a little bit bigger than most people would use for propagating, but then we don't have to pot up. So we start off in that size, and that's throughout the whole shop. So that is the minimum size that we do for a pot, and it's as you go wider, you go taller, so we really need to accommodate that, but we have a beautiful ceramicist that we've just paired up with for a few vessels, actually for the florist next door, for my florist, and just easing her into it. Didn't want to scare her off too quickly, but have some really nice ideas in the works for some lovely pots, good size pots too, because these plants will grow, they will need potting up, they're not going to stay that size forever. So you do, when you buy a pot, you don't want it to be too snug, for the reason of you also want airflow around your nursery pot, and then room to be able to pot that up so that you're not buying another pot.
That's a very good point. So certainly I think there's a lot of scope there for someone like the ceramicist you've engaged to make beautiful pots that actually do fit inserts.
Yes, and that's how we recommend people use their pots as well. That's why we don't stock pots with holes. Yep. So it's a cache pot, so a cover pot. So your nursery pot goes into that. And that means you can take it out very easily for watering, and you can feel if it's dry,
and
wet.
You don't get drips and damage to all your woodwork and
No,
mantelpieces and shelves.
No, exactly, because it's just simply not practical to move all your pots and plants and then move them back. It just takes way too long. People are too busy for that. Well, I certainly am. And then with your nursery pot, if you've got a problem or a pest, it's very easy to remove that. And nursery pots typically have, I would say, about 6 to 12 holes, so super good drainage, whereas decorative pots have 1 hole. So you find a lot of the time they get very boggy, they don't drain properly, and that's typically when people get into a bit of trouble. They say, my plant's not doing really well, can I send you a picture? And immediately it's potted into its decorative pot. So take it out of there, new potting mix, nursery pot, keep a better eye on it.
Alice, as we sort of wind up this episode, because we could talk
really?
all night. I know. I know.
We need some more drinks if we're going to do that.
I feel like we could. There'll probably, this won't be the first time, Alice. I have a gut feeling you'll be on this series. But tell us about your collection at home, or your personal collection, which you brought some of it into the shop. But your top 3 faves, what's on your wish list to acquire
next? Oh, man.
next?
That's like when people say, what's your top 5 flowers? And I'm like, oh, gosh, okay. Oh, I'd have to go, let's go Alocasia Stingray, because we have some very mature ones of those. We have some really pretty Caladium White Christmas at the moment. I love our Monstera Stanleyana that we have grown ourselves, and they're so healthy and happy and variegated, and they're amazing. Yes. that 2? Have I done 2?
Oh, I think we've done 3.
One more?
Counting the caladiums, but yeah.
Can I have 4?
Yes,
So,
certainly,
okay.
Alice.
And melanochrysum, philodendron melanochrysum. We have those coming on.
Velvet, you sort of spanned a few.
And then like equal second is like every Ripsalis in the shop.
Oh, Ripsalis, yes. And Dashidias didn't make the list, Alice, but that's,
there is an Ovata over in the corner there. A little bit fond of that. He does have a not for sale tag in him. He's quite a decent size. So
all of those plants you've just mentioned you have. What's on your desired list? You've got a few variegated monsteras. You've ticked that box.
Yes, and we do have them being, hopefully, a few of those making their way. Actually, we've got one in the store now, can you believe it or not, for sale on the floor, and it's still here. Wow. Yes, I wonder if anyone's noticed down the front there where it's sitting. It doesn't have a plant tag in it, and juvenile leaves are sort of a bit interesting, but it is very, very, very nicely variegated. Yes. Next on the list, big Alocasia fan. I'd really like to... we have black velvets and green velvets. I'd really like to get some Cuprea into production, and we'd need to get one first before we get to producing. Just the list. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, don't know, but
all of it. And just some really beautiful philodendrons at the moment. I'm really taken with philodendron golden tuxtler. Really like that. Like the form, like the way it grows and the colouring on the leaf. Yeah, it's a really nice little plant. So we have a couple of those in the store now, and I've just chopped and propped a couple of trays of them today. Nice. And then philodendron tortums, actually. Yeah, you might have noticed a tray of those as you walked in. They're on their way. Yeah, just sort of starting to...
Excellent choices.
Starting to really branch out.
Yes, fabulous.
And very brave too, as we headed into winter.
Very brave. I know, I must admit.
Fortune favours the brave. That's what I'm going with.
And fortune favours a grower with a heat mat, which you do have. You've got a beastie heat mat. Yours is, almost commercial. Well, I'm going to call it commercial size. It's go hard or go home. Alice has got a huge heat mat.
Yep. Yes, we do.
God, you can almost lie down on it. It's that big, Alice. But
yes.
Yes, I think
that works hard for the money, that heat mat. It sure does. Sure does. And my sister takes care of that glass house, and everything is growing beautifully there.
A team effort. So your sisters, as we haven't mentioned much of your lovely sister, but who is your partner in crime with this lovely shop. But
yes.
It's obviously keeping it in the family and working together as a team, and I think you need the help, don't you? You can't be everywhere at once.
Absolutely. Well, technically I can be in 2 places at once. I can be in the plant shop and in the florist.
Yes, because they're side by side.
Joined by a sneaky doorway, which is terribly convenient and saves on wages. No staff required.
Alice, I would invite you just to let everyone know your address and maybe your Instagram handle. Is that the right description, Alice? I missed the whole social media.
Yeah.
Is it handle?
I'll just say what it is.
Please share, because in case people want to come and visit you.
Potso Botanic, our store, is on Fullerton Road at 462 Fullerton Road at Myrtle Bank. We're open 9am till 5pm, 9 till 1 on Saturdays. They are subject to change, obviously, depending on what I'm doing next door at the florist. I could have a big wedding, which means everything's shut here.
Yes.
You can find us on Facebook at Potso Botanic, and on Instagram, Potso_Botanic.
Fabulous. And having just clarified again, we are in Adelaide, South Australia. So
we are.
If you're in town, come by and visit, and I'm sure Alice will make you feel very welcome. Alice, it's been my absolute joy and privilege to finally pin you down and interview you. And
thank you, Jo, for having me. It's been lovely.
I'm sure we'll do this again.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Home of Houseplants. I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would love for you to subscribe and leave a review, as it does help many others find the podcast, and in particular those that share the passion, the obsession that is growing indoor plants. I would like to give a shout out to Music Bed for the fabulous cool beats that you've heard during the course of this podcast and throughout the episodes. Home of Houseplants has a licensing agreement with musicbed.com to support the artists, both emerging and established. If you do wish to contact me, please do so via Instagram at Home of Houseplants or via my email address, which you can easily find on the website, homeofhouseplants.com.au. Please enjoy the week, the day, your evening, whatever time you are listening to this podcast, and I look forward for you to join me on the next episode, whenever that will be in the future. Bye, guys.